Hello, I'm Brad Fuller.
And I'm Peter Orenstein.
Welcome to our workshop. We thought we might start by talking to you about what we promised in our abstract to familiarise you and to refamiliarise us with what we plan to do and to keep us accountable. So I'll just read then, shall I, Peter? Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get straight into it.
This workshop will explore how the authors, that's us,
Yay.
created space for student voices by shifting the locus of control over repertoire, the creative process, and creative output from teacher, that was us, to student directed. By fostering student agency over the creative process, we suggest that music teachers are able to see the different voices in their classroom. Each of these voices have diverse backgrounds, opinions, positions, and perceptions, and by flipping the recreation of past works to the creation of new multimedia materials, students have the opportunity to be heard.
The workshop will feature audio-visual examples of this approach in action through a discussion of the underlying music education philosophies, pedagogies, processes, and procedures. It's a lot of P's. Participants, you guys, will be able to interact with virtual resources that we and you can implement in the classroom, as well as participate in a facilitated discussion. Whoops. This was written pre-lockdown and pre-virtual conference, but we will try. A facilitated discussion on how this approach might remove the barriers between artist and technician, art music and popular music, traditional instruments and computer instruments, by helping students to focus on using the best tools to tell their story.
Nice. I like where this is headed so far. We hope to demonstrate that a collaborative multimedia songwriting approach to music education can help to embed intercultural competence and socially inclusive behaviours, motivate individuals to challenge inequalities throughout their lives, subvert the status quo, and establish a, ready for it, counter-hegemony. Now, because this is an inclusive space, we also want to establish a counter-hegemony.
Whoa.
Both kinds. And, this is cool, now there's something in it for us as well, and increase teachers' musicianship and positive perceptions and excitement about their music program while more effectively meeting their students' needs. Wow. We were on fire back in the day, Pete, when we wrote this.
It was a good day.
Hooray. All right, so having set the bar, let's get into it.
So, a little bit about who we are and how we got to that abstract. I first met Brad in around about 2013 when I first started teaching. I was fresh out of uni and met Brad, and we just sparked a great conversation from day one about education. What are we doing? And in particular, what are we doing in a technology-rich environment? And so we found ourselves in a space that was freshly designed to facilitate music making and treating music as a verb. And so we went on a massive journey, but that was a continuation of a journey that Brad had for many years before me. So Brad, can you give us a little rundown of how we met and what happened before that?
Well, it was a long and winding road, Peter. I think it wasn't just a road, it was a long and winding road. I'm a self-taught electric bassist from the 1980s. And along the way, I studied jazz and music education and learnt my craft as a musician on the road, as they say, and on the stage. Probably those two things, on the stage and on the road. And so when I came to music education, I taught from what I knew. And the last not several decades, but the last few decades have, for me, been about marrying my experience as a self-taught bassist who went to learn his craft on the stage and on the road, and then went to university, and then came to school, and then realised that I needed to upskill myself in pedagogy and music education philosophy,
Right.
which led me to study more deeply and ultimately to a PhD in music education at the Conservatorium of Music in Sydney, Australia, where I lecture in popular music studies and all sorts of other things to this day. And so I met Peter right at the key moment where we were both given an opportunity to design a program from scratch, including the room that we taught in. And that was back in the end of 2011, 2012, 2013. And so what we're talking to you about today represents our reflective journey as we took our similar experience in many ways, wouldn't you say, Pete?
Yeah, as musicians and teachers.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my self-taught but then went to university background kind of matches Pete's experience in music as well, and we both found ourselves thirsty for more knowledge about what was really working in the literature. And so what we want to share with you today is the result of us coming from our background, bringing our background together, coming into a space and saying, what do we know from our experience? What can we learn from the literature? And what can we do with the young people in front of us? And how can we reflect on what's happening and use our experience, the literature, and the experience with our students to fashion a music education program that works for everyone?
So along the way, we just solved problems that were in front of us. Working together, we'd just rock up each day and just work it out. But as we grew together, we started to read what other people had to say about music education. And we found that we weren't alone anymore. A lot of people were thinking about the same things. And we found this really great and comforting. And so let's dive into some of the key highlights from recent literature from Ismay's very own journal. Let's have a look, Brad.
So this is the literature that informed the first paragraph of our abstract. And the first one comes from Australia. Hooray!
Yay.
Represent. And let's, could you read that title for us, Pete, please?
I can. It's in bold, so I'll have a good go. But beyond the dots on the page, there it is, I can see it. Harnessing transculturation and music education to address intercultural competence and social inclusion. Thanks, Renee.
So this is a great survey to help those of us who want to upskill on transculturation, and we'll just dive into the key findings here in the abstract and encourage you to read this one for yourself. In fact, encourage you to read all of these for yourself. And as Pete said, these not only are these fresh, these are very fresh. All of these references come from 2021, with the exception of Cruise, which goes all the way back to 2020. So very fresh.
Yeah, nice.
So Crawford found, from this research, indicated that intercultural competence and socially inclusive behaviours were, get this, Pete, seamlessly embedded in the music learning activities that were, ready? Here comes a hit list: student-centered, active, practical, experiential, and authentic. Straight out of the Progressive Music Educators Playbook.
Let's put all the buzzwords in one, but I like them, so let's keep it.
All of our faves.
Yeah.
All right. Next.
Yeah, so here we go. We got Lauren. I'm not going to attempt it, Brad, but hopefully someone who's watched this can educate us on pronunciation. Thanks, Lauren. But yeah, her article, Equity via Relations of Equality, Bridging the Classroom Society Divide.
Yes. Now, Kapelka Rishame is,
Nice.
I believe, a big fan, by the way. Hello. And Lauren found the purpose of this, well, Lauren's purpose was to undertake a philosophical inquiry, which is one of our favourite kinds of inquiry, to investigate the nature of equity and to consider which music education practices might best support more equitable societal relationships. And she says in the first sentence, in fact, although music educators have asserted the importance of naming systemic inequities, the mechanisms through which practices within music classrooms remain under-theorized. So cut to the chase. So yes, lots of talk about equity, but in the bottom here we have, I also consider how identifying as part of a musical community can motivate individuals to challenge inequities throughout their lives. Equity is not a stable end, but a relational value. So now we begin to see, before we talked about experiential, coming together, authentic, and now we're talking about in order to come together as a musical community to challenge inequities throughout our lives.
It's nice. Okay, let's keep moving on. But yeah, all of these articles worth reading for sure. One of our faves here, reorganizing the music curriculum as multicultural music education. De Villiers. And we're over to South Africa now.
We probably should have had a map of the world device, Pete. So De Villiers says cultural hegemony, or hegemony, permeates society and is spread through social institutions, i.e. our classrooms. And we're cutting to the chase. So as spreaders, of cultural hegemony, what can we do? Well, De Villiers says, I also suggest possible frameworks for curriculum developers, that's us, in democracies, also us, to consider which would subvert, here we go, ready? Call to arms coming. Subvert the status quo and establish a counter-hegemony. There's a great call to arms, hey Pete?
Yeah. It's anytime you put subvert, I think we get our little spidey senses go up. Here we go. Speaking of which, hip-hop, the ultimate. He didn't know what he was doing. I'm going to keep that in the Australian Ocker accent. Student perspectives of a white teacher's hip-hop class. I have to be authentic there. It's in the spirit of the article.
So, Adam J. Cruz, another one of our faves, found that overall students appreciated the teacher's acknowledgement of his lack of hip-hop experience. We get excited about this because as teacher trainers, which we didn't disclose in the preamble at the beginning, we speak to lots of in-service and pre-service teachers every year, and the I don't know what I'm doing is a key catchphrase. So this is really empowering because overall students appreciated the teacher's acknowledgement of his lack of hip-hop experience and his ability to prioritize their perspectives and voices. They reported gaining valuable musical experiences in the course as well as developing cross-cultural competence to better understand their fellow students.
Yeah, I mean, it's super powerful.
Nice.
Just having an article saying it's okay to listen to each other's music and perspectives and make it as well. And what can we learn from that? It's really awesome.
And actually works really well when you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. It's very comforting. Okay, here we go. Integrating popular music into urban schools, assessing the effectiveness of a comprehensive music teacher development program by Hal Abellers et al.
So now we get to the teacher. We've talked a great deal about communities of students and challenging equities, and I guess we touched on not knowing what you're doing and how that opens up a space, because this whole thing is about opening up spaces for student voices. And this one talks about what might happen for the teacher when we do that. And they say the inclusion of popular music in K-12 classrooms requires a change not only in instrumentation and repertoire, but also pedagogical approaches. And that would mirror the work of Lucy Green over the last 20 years or so. And here's what happened when teachers did change their pedagogical approaches. They revealed increases, most notably in teachers' musicianship, and also an increase in teachers' positive perceptions about their music programs, specifically their, get ready, level of excitement, sounds good, about the state of their music program, and that their music program was more effective at meeting their students' needs than it had been previously. So we think those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we think those 5 articles from our abstract are really exciting and really current, and really confirm to us that there's something in this, not just for our students, but for us as well, that can help us to raise our level of excitement. And we think that's something worth striving for.
So let's get into some practical examples of how this looks like for us and how we've solved the problems in our classroom to create space for student voices. So let's turn into a computer and look at our Canvas course for Year 10. Brad, what do we find here?
So this is our Canvas Free for Teachers site, and anybody can start their own school in a cloud, so in the cloud. So we did. And so this is a model Year 10 course, and for us, everything changed when we moved from a topics-based approach to a gig-based learning approach. And so this is our gig-based learning approach, hence the footer at the bottom. And in a topics-based approach, typically the teacher says this is the topic for the term, and this is the canon, this is the repertoire, and you will learn about this style of music for the term. And we said, well, what if it was just about a gig? And what if we had a gig to do? And as a result of having a gig, well, there's all sorts of things that we had to learn about and learn to do. And so getting back to our abstract about authentic, experiential, collaborative, all of those things, and indeed getting back to the title of this, what is this, Pete? It's a workshop. Getting back to the title of this workshop about creating space for student voices. So rather than the teacher saying this is the topic, these are the pieces, moving to a gig and having just a very loose wrapping around the learning, we were able to move from teacher push down to a student, much more student-driven approach. So let's have a look at the way. But then, oftentimes we know that if you just say to people, "Do whatever the heck you like," that's a lot to choose from. And so we found that putting some bumpers or some barriers or even just some guidelines in place meant that we were able to help students by scaffolding their learning, but not getting too scaffolded. So let's have a look at how we did that.
Yeah, so the first one you can see there is the Like a Version project. And moving through, you can see various projects or gigs that we've just coined, depending on what we wanted to get out of it. And essentially what we're trying to guide students through is a year's worth of music making, going from a covering musician to an original artist in the space of that year. So the first one, you can see Like a Version gig, is kind of derived from an Australian radio station segment called the Like a Version. And they have very famous artists who come on and do great versions of existing music. And so we've taken that as a guide to how to start thinking creatively about a piece of music in your own unique way, bringing the unique characteristics of the group or unique voices contributing to the group and bringing that into the music making process. And so we love it. It's a great pun for starters, but also just the basic skills of reconstitution and thinking about instrumentation, tempo, reharmonization, and trying to morph it into a new style in a safe way. So you're not thinking how to create something new, but thinking how to contribute your voice in a way that's really like a nice step from being just a straight covering artist. Moving to the next gig, the Hook Project.
So the name there is in honor of two of our students, the Hook brothers. And so this one is taking, so we've just gone from, rather than going from a blank page and creating a new song from scratch, we've genre shifted, or we've changed up a cover tune to make a new version of it that's unique to the people in the room. And this one looks at the building block of popular music, the hook, and says to each band member, make a hook. And then from that hook, let's bring our hooks together and make a piece of music.
The third gig is the Picasso Project. And so we start writing a new piece of music based upon our knowledge of hook writing and reconstituting existing music into a new piece of music that's derived from a particular piece of music. So we're writing over the top of a piece of music, but we're not starting something from new. And this is based upon Pablo Picasso's quote, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." And so we're...
And yes, asterisk, he may never have said it, but that's not important.
Might have been Steve Jobs.
Well, Steve Jobs popularized
Yeah.
the fact that Picasso said it.
Yeah.
But, which we talk about with the students.
Mm. Yeah. And so we would find it a really good way of learning about songwriting. If you're analyzing a piece of music and going, what is the tempo, what is the key, what is, etc., and going, okay, let's apply that to my own piece of music. And just by using the existing techniques that someone else has used, it allows someone to imprint their own unique characteristics onto that same format. And it's got a rich history of people, I guess, of people using this same technique throughout the history of songwriting, as using other people as inspiration. But the key characteristic is that we're just using one song as inspiration, not many different songs. So that's...
I think the other key, Pete, is that it gives the students the opportunity to say, what's going on here in this piece of music? What do I like? And what might I retain? And what might I change to tell my unique story, but informed by what's come before?
Great. Yeah, I believe we still have a listening template with "we're keeping" and "we're stealing." There you go. The Gumbo Project.
So this one's really special to us and comes from, and for those of you from, well, I guess for those of you who have an interest in New Orleans culture, you will know that gumbo is a really special dish because it represents the coming together of many cultures. And so this project is all about coming together from many musical cultures and creating a new gumbo of music. And we really like this one. We think it extends beautifully from the Picasso project, where we're creating a piece of music where we're stealing from one piece. In this case, we're listening to a variety of genres which are introduced by each student. Each student brings a number of genres to the table and says, these are genres that I think might be compatible to make a whole new gumbo. And so we love introducing students to the concept of the gumbo. In Australia, not that well known in our experience. And again, I think this is a great example of the way we like to present the gigs to the students. They can learn to cook a gumbo there. Is it Cooking with Danae, Pete?
Yeah, Cooking with Danae. Sorry, I was just smelling the delicious gumbo on the screen there. Yeah, and the unique thing about this and all the projects is that they're genre style agnostic, as you like to say, Brad.
I do like
we're not locked in here, so we've drawn a commonality between many different topics or genres, which is they're all stealing each other's, or they're all using other music from that's come before them as inspiration. But we're not locking people into bringing certain characteristics into their new composition. They can see what happens. So we've actually opened up some tabs here to take you through how this process actually starts with the students. So how about we go into that, Brad, and get our hands steady.
So coming back to how then do we create space for student voices? And so we just have through selecting, providing opportunities. So we move from you must do this to you have the opportunity, there's a gig, and you have an opportunity to be involved. And so the thing that we love about this is that it pushes the students to the repertoire. So the first question is, well, what songs already exist? What songs do I already know about? What songs do I love? And getting to what we read in the literature, it opens up a discussion where each student says, here's some music I know and love, and another student says, here's some music I know and love. And it gives the teacher opportunities as well to say, and here's some music I know and love. And also to say, and here's some really amazing stuff that happened before you were born as well. So the first step, I think, for us is always about the music. And a little while ago, streaming was invented, and we think, let's really get on board with streaming. But rather than just use it to replicate practices where the teacher says, here's a great piece from the canon, everybody sit quietly and let's listen to it. We love the collaborative playlist function of Spotify, and we think that's a really great opportunity to open up student voice and, as we've said in the abstract, to create space for student voices by shifting the locus of control over repertoire. So let's have a look at how we use Spotify then, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, it is fairly primitive because this is exactly what we do. We open up a fresh playlist. So we literally create a playlist. And
so let's say for example, we're doing the Like a Version project. The first question then clearly is, well, what song are we going to do a version of? And so that shifts everything from the teacher saying you're going to learn this song to what song are we going to learn? And when we work with people, the first thing that we've noticed is that, well, once you start talking about things, it just takes a really long time. So in each one of the tools that we want to share with you today is designed to stop talking and start listening. And so rather than say, I think we should play this song, no, I think we should play that song, we say, well, everybody drop a song in, or drop 3 songs in. So let's do that, Pete. So for the Like a Version, what songs could we consider, I wonder?
Well, looking at sort of pieces that... Oh, what do you got there?
Well, I'm not going to say until you... Oh, here's the other thing too. Nobody speaks until everybody's made a choice.
If you're going to self-promote, I'm going to go there too.
I'll tell you in a moment why I selected the one I selected.
Let's go that. Why not?
All right. Nice. So I selected Abby Fuller because she's my daughter, and I happen to play on that particular track. And Pete, why did you select yours?
Because I'm in the Hot Potato Band, and I play on that particular track as well.
Great.
So, yeah.
So I think this for us is a great example of what we read about earlier, about the opportunity for students to have conversations about, I like this, but then to listen to the music. And so if you had, say, 7 people in a band, you might get 7 songs, but then some students say, I couldn't decide, and here's 3 songs. So you might have a playlist of 21 songs to listen to there. And this is an opportunity for teachers and students to practice collaboration. How do we work together to pick the best song for us to try? And sometimes it might be, maybe there's a few songs at the end, and it might be about, well, let's throw some spaghetti against the wall with these and try things out. Because as we learnt from the literature review at the start, making mistakes and taking wrong turns is all part of this process, and it's all okay. So, anything more on that, Pete?
Yeah, I just find it interesting as well. We read about the system and just everything working against people having voices, and you can see down below they're recommended already. They're trying to lock us in some sort of box. So we just really stress the drop in a song that's close to your heart, and let's give it a listen first. And so often that looks like a really cheap headphone splitter with 5 to 7 headphones plugged into it, everyone listening on stereo to each other's music before they've made any decisions, because we found that our students were quick to make a decision, so we had to just say, let's just listen first, and then once we've heard everyone's voice, everyone else's song, then we can start to have a discussion.
So that's how we might choose a song, and similarly for each one of the projects, or each one of the gigs, there'll be slightly different criteria for what song should be on the list. And I also think it's interesting, sometimes students say, I don't know, because there's a lot of music to choose from, I don't know what to choose. So the recommended can be quite helpful for recalcitrant students to say, well, is there anything on the recommended list that perhaps you might like? So thanks, Spotify. Sometimes those suggestions can really help us get indecisive students across the line. So that helps us to get into some listening and to have some student promoted listening. And we found incredible repertoire over the years being suggested by students that we never would have dreamt of. And so we found that to be wonderful. So we would, from there, in order to share that, by the way, Spotify has share the link to this collaborative playlist, and we would place that on our learning management system, and students would access that from there. Okay, so that's one way. So that's creating space for student voices through collaborative playlists for repertoire. And then the next thing we might do is provide a space for student voice in the songwriting process, and this would come under let's have a look at how we might make some create some musical spaces, Pete. This would come under the heading of play it, don't say it. And we really promote the idea of let's just get one in the can, as the session musicians would say back in the day. And again, rather than just talking about what you could do or what you might do, we just say, well, get busy and put something down. So this is Spotify, and what are we looking at here, Pete?
So this is actually Spotify in disguise.
Oh, sorry, whoops. This is Spotify's.
Well, it's owned by Spotify, so
it is.
You're not wrong. It's Soundtrap. So a little while ago, we, like the rest of the world, got excited by online doors, and this was pre-pandemic getting excited about it, because it just opened up the virtual space for us inside the classroom. And we, in particular, if we're thinking about getting everyone's thoughts and musical capabilities and hopes and dreams onto the track that we're creating, then there's no better place than a collaborative door, because it's like a Google Doc, except it's not. It's rich with media. And so here just allows us to create music, and everyone can do it at the same time, which is pretty amazing. So I guess, do you want to demonstrate how this happens, Brad? Say if we were working from Spotify and we're saying, cool, which track do you want to go with, Brad?
I want to go with your track, Peter.
Sure. Amazing. So okay, that's
right.
enough for us to get started. So,
Okay.
and so we're not in each of these projects. We're always using what we created in the Spotify playlist as the stimulus, and of course we get them to analyze the music and do all sorts of things to get behind what's happening there. But just really quickly, this is a process that we go from in Soundtrap. So I'm going to create a beat, Brad.
Yeah, so myriad of approaches here, but it might be that students are saying, "Well, let's get a groove going," and so rather than talking about it, get something in the can. So you might have said to the students, "All right, let's split up into different roles, and somebody be a rhythmic role, somebody play a bass role, somebody play a harmony role, somebody play a melody role." But in this instance, the instruction might be, well, let's come up with that initial groove idea and see what we can work out from there. And so, Pete, what have you come up with?
4 on the floor.
That's very interesting. So, and then, cool. So that's what Pete's come up with. And then, but here's the cool thing. So I can say, oh, that's very good. Here's another cool thing. So it's really important to know who did what. And so we always have our students label their track. So Pete, if you would be so kind as to label a track. And then, so while Pete's doing that, traditionally I'd have to wait and then, can I have a go on the drums, or can I have a go in the studio? But because everybody's got their own recording studio, we don't have to do that anymore. So I could come up with a version that says, while Pete's creating his, I can be creating mine, and it might be interesting to see where we land. All right. So when I'm happy, and here's another cool thing that we love about this way of working. I don't have to share until I'm ready. And so sometimes in music classrooms we have people with differing levels of skill. Maybe they haven't had as much time programming beats. And some people are quick at it, and some people take longer. So we love the fact that you can draft, take as long as you like, or do it as quickly as you like, and you don't have to do anything until you hit the sync button. So I've been beavering away, and when I hit the sync button,
amazing,
Pete gets a message and says sync, and there's my idea as well. And then we always talk about, we'll just hit the mute button and have a listen. And then we can mute, and then our key at this point is always, there doesn't need to be delete anymore. We're working in a world where storage is cheap comparatively. So we have a mute it, don't delete it.
But it was so good, Brad. But yeah, I'll mute it. So
there you go. So that's one way. That was just a way that, in this case, it was both of us trying to come up with a groove idea, but it could have been Pete coming up with a groove idea, with me coming up with a bass idea, and working in sync at the same time, or just slightly behind. So I can go, oh, that's a really nice groove, Pete. I'm going to add a bass line to that. Or actually, it's a really nice 3 grooves that you've offered the group, Pete. I really like all 3 of them, and I'm going to create 9 bass lines to go with each of those, because you can. And as long as we have students doing what we call good door hygiene and labelling their tracks and labelling their takes, then it's really easy for all the band members to work out where they're at and to have those conversations over on the side as well. And so it can also help students who aren't great at formulating their thoughts in real time to think about what they want, maybe write it down and post it in the chat right there. Or indeed, you can see just above Pete's head there's a call button, and you can have video calls with your bandmates as well when you go home after school. So lots of opportunities to promote the student voice and to collaborate, and lots of opportunities for students to practice those skills and for teachers to model and remediate and to fade.
Yeah, it's neat.
And then the third thing that oftentimes people need to do in a collaborative songwriting process is to write lyrics. And there's a particularly good piece of software for that. You may have heard of it.
Yeah, it's very high tech.
Would you like to do a reveal, Pete?
Yeah, the great reveal. Here we go. A blank Google Doc. Dun dun dun.
And we love... So this is our approach to templating. This is called the Gbl Lyrics Template. It has nothing. So then it can simply be a matter of saying to students, well, just get some ideas down. So I might start by typing Brad's verse, and at the same time, down the bottom, and of course most likely you'd be in class at the same time, and you'd be sitting next to each other, and you might look down, and then, well, actually, I might say, hey, Pete, that's really good. Do you mind if we... And then I might just go, oh, that's really good, Pete.
There you go.
I'm pretty excited about both of those. I think they work pretty nicely with the groove that we created before.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't live in Australia, a panel van is something worth Googling. It was a very big part of my youth. So at that point, we could have a discussion. If we were offline, of course, we could use the comments feature, and we're off and running. So 3 pieces of software and 3 ways that I don't think really existed before to open up opportunities for students to have a voice, to democratize the classroom, to decenter the classroom, and to, I think, to help facilitate, if not all, many of those lofty goals from the abstract.
So when we're thinking about the natural outworking of the gigs that we've been looking at, a lot of people would go straight to a performance, but we decided that the best way to capture what we were doing is a music television show, and we used YouTube to capture that and to host our TV show. And we called it R&B TV, not because it was based upon R&B at all, just because our physical environment was called R&B, and this is the theme that was designed by students themselves, which led into a series of videos comprised of the music videos of the original piece, or in this case, the Like a Version project, and then also some interviews of the students documenting the creative process and how they worked together.
So instead of writing about it in a workbook, students were able to speak about it in a multimedia fashion in their own words. And in this way, lots and lots of jobs that had never been dreamt of before that could be carried out in a music classroom. Which brings us to, well, you can't really do this in a music classroom. You need to reimagine what a music classroom is. And for us, the music classroom became a performance space and a music television studio, which we called, as Pete said, Rhythm and Blues.
Yeah, and so if we flip over to the floor plan, we can see a number of different, what we called stations, and places for music making to happen. If we follow the numbers, number 1, you can see base station, and we flow around the room to various places. So if we think of base station as a Genius bar, if you went to, say, an Apple store, it'd be a similar concept of getting some help, usually from an adult. And then moving to the creation stations where you might draft an idea or do some private practice. Number 3, the jam rooms, which you do some collaborative rehearsal. 4, the jam stations, which is a chance to do some overdubbing or electronic music production. And then we move to the 5, the stage, which is pretty self-explanatory, but often would be not performing to people, but actually just rehearsing with a teacher or using the technology that was on the stage to do a live take, which would move across to the suites where you could overdub from that live take.
So coming back to the literature where we started today, here's a quote from Danielle from Lucy Green's seminal book. She says, "It's like a teacher could be near the room, and when you need their help, they'll come. But otherwise, you just improvise by yourself." Shanice says, "And then they give us ideas." And Nicola says, "Teachers should set your goals and be there if you need their help." So that's what we did. We designed a space where the students could be in the rooms and we'd be just outside in case they needed help or if they needed us to give them ideas. So looking around the room, we tried to implement the latest and greatest materials we could, and it was all centered around the idea of students being able to be in the space making music, but thanks to silent instruments and headphones, we could all be in the same place at the same time. So, on behalf of Pete and I, we'd like to thank you for coming to this workshop with us today, which wasn't quite as... What was it that we were going to do? We were going to have
interactive.
Yes, not quite as interactive as we expected about 18 months ago when we put this workshop idea together. But thank you very much. Pete, how do people interact with us?
Yeah, so you can see down below gigbasedlearning.com. You'll find all sorts of things that we're up to together, including some live online courses, some self-paced online courses. We've even got some free resources like the Canvas course that we've been showing you today of Year 9 and 10. And you can also just get in contact with us via the contact form, and we'd love to hear from you and discuss anything that we've been talking about today.
So we hope that we've given you some ideas, and going again back to the literature as Hal et al. Said, we hope that your level of excitement about the state of your music program could increase as a result of spending time with you today. We'd like to leave you with a stylized version of what our program looks like in action. This is a video we made attempting to capture the very process that we've been speaking about today. Thanks again, and see you next time.
Here we go. Check this out.